Today's topic is alone, loneliness, and solitude. And let's move right away into the meditation to prepare ourselves. This is going to be a bit of a guidance in silence. I'm going to leave longer periods of silence, but I want to invite you to draw close to the prompt if it's helpful for you to draw close to the prompt, meaning really give the prompt a good go. And then we'll move into the silence so everybody can be with themselves as we follow the prompt. All right, so I invite you to close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, become aware of you being here on this call, sitting with your eyes closed. And now become aware that the you sitting here has feelings right now. There are emotions that are present as part of your experience. And see if you can notice what those emotions are. What you're feeling or carrying or in your awareness. And now become aware that you sitting here have a mind that has thoughts. And what are the thoughts that are making up your experience right now? And now bring your awareness that you are here in a body in what we call form. Be present to yourself here in form. And now bring your awareness to the sense that you are more than your body. Be present as you, to you, for you. And in the silence, be present to what that means to you. And now be present to whatever else is part of your experience. With whom are you present? In whom or what are you present? In the deepest part of you that's here. What or who else is part of these deep places? And what about this silence where you are with yourself? What is comfortable and consoling? What is uncomfortable? What is this like? And in this silence that begins our time together, we end our opening meditation. I invite you to take a very large breath, a large inhale, and hold it, and then gently exhale. It would be very easy to play with words around the alone, lonely. You can be alone and not be lonely. You can be lonely for all the best reasons. There's so many different directions that the relationship between these concepts, solitary doesn't mean being alone. And I don't want to get into semantics like that, as playful as that could be. But I think the fact that we do have different connotations can point us to something deeper to reflect upon that's very essential to our nature. And I want to give a couple stories as a way to lead into our reflection and our sharing tonight. So I would say that the person of Jesus in my life today, in some ways, is the same as when I was 4 years old. But in other ways is very, very different. For a number of years in my own life, it wasn't just Jesus. It wasn't just Jesus and Mary. It was a whole slew of sacred beings that I would say were my intimate daily sojourners. But I'm just going to refer to Jesus here to make it easy. That I drew great consolation around the experience that I am walking every step of my life with somebody as great a friend and lover as Jesus. That literally my life, walking step by step, had the enjoyment of, in my solitary path, of never being alone without Jesus. And again, and others, but I'm just referring to Jesus here. Great consolation. And today, that experience is true, but not true in the same way it was back then. It's still true in a way that's incredibly universally Christ oriented. which then leads to less specific, intimate experience. It's not just in my mind, oh, my spirituality has shifted from this to this, but it's shifted experientially. And something that gave me great, great consolation isn't there for me to have in the same way anymore. Not because of something bad or disconnecting, but because something of my experience is expanded to a universal anointedness that it doesn't hold the same energy space like what I was experiencing before. And in one way, it's less solitary, and in more way, in one another way, it's more solitary. It's more solitary because it lacks the form that would give my heart great consolation. But it's less solitary because there's a certain immediacy and intimacy. It's more solitary because I can't speak really with great articulation to who Jesus is for me or who Jesus is. So it's more solitary that way. And it's less solitary because there's a sensibility of aliveness of the Christ. And so we all have these kinds of shiftings in our life. All of us, every single person, even if it's subtle, I'm saying something that's a little more dramatic, even if it's subtle, we have shiftings. And part of stepping into the freedom is to notice what those shiftings are. Like, even as I was defining this shifting, I could feel myself well up inside with the growing intimacy that I can't even give you a specific phrase for, and yet is more certain than ever. One of the things when I entered the monastery that I was very excited, and I think I've mentioned this before, about Lent in particular, was that I was going to get to walk every day with Jesus's life. I was so excited. Each season has a different feel to it, a different theme, and has different themes, universal life themes. But the something about the Lent is so tangible and available to life here on earth. Because in this story of this human being, we have this story of him walking and opening up to his gifts and going through betrayal and having great consolations of healings happen and beautiful connections and ultimately leading towards crucifixion. We've got this availability to us that you can hold on to. Hence why so many people will take a crucifix and hold on to it, right? Because the feeling of holding on to it can offer a certain solace. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And Lent in the monastery had that in a very powerful way because every day was so filled with ritual. I mean, you had every chant and every reading and every theme and every prayer. And we even added to it with inspirational quotes and all sorts of special gifts and things. We were free of needing to attend any other occupation. So it was really like being washed over and over again in an ever deepening experience. So Lent did not let me down. Did not let me down. And I can remember when, and I think I may have told this story, but it applies here and will move us towards our sharing. I can remember when it came time for me to take my simple vows. And simple vows are vows you take for 3 years. And it's a conditional assent for the rest of your life to be a monastic. It's giving an opportunity to be a monastic for a longer period of time so that time can show that the vocation is right or not. And that can actually be renewed up to 3 times, so 9 years total, before at the end of the 9 years, if it's not clear then you would leave. I've never heard of that happening, but canonically speaking, that's permissible. And I remember my simple vows ceremony, which of course was ecstatic, and the chant and the prostrations and the everything about it. And I went to bed that night, and I could feel during the vows ceremony, let me preface this energetic whoosh. Every cell, everything was changed energetically. There was a signature that I became impressed with as a Carmelite. And I went to bed that night, and I had this very powerful dream. In the dream, everything was lit up. Everything was so lit up. And I was standing there, and I was white. I was only white light, completely etheric white light, and I was naked. So I had form, I was in a body, but I was completely naked and completely white light. And my openness and my innocence was unmitigated. And as I was standing there that way, I looked over to what was the Pope at the time. And somehow this image of the Pope, whatever the Pope was my love, was my lover, was my beloved. And I was looking over in this beautiful, vulnerable state over at this image of represented in the Pope, which was Christ to me, not here, just in the consciousness. And as I was there, I was like wide-eyed and almost expecting us to run into each other's arms. There was this beautiful, childlike, um, complete joy. And this Pope, who was Christ, wasn't looking at me and was looking at a few people. And he was talking with great focus and intensity with these people. And I thought, well, that's okay. I'll wait here. And I waited. I waited. And he never looked over at me. And I went from feeling completely uninhibited in my joy to sadness beginning to wash through me. That my love, I was here. I was here. I mean, here. I mean that in the deepest sense of the word. And my love didn't look at me, didn't gaze upon me. And finally, I went over and I said, I have come. I've given all. I'm here. And this Pope form that was the beloved looked at me and he said, yes, I know. And in that, you don't need me to look at you anymore. We commune without having to do this. We abide without having to communicate in old ways. Yes, you are here. And I am here. So there I was. I went from numerous states all in one dream, right? Sweet joy, openness, feeling of connection, feeling of union, to then being shaken because it didn't seem like it was being reflected back to me. But then having my sheer innocence of the vows that had washed through me, that sheer innocence, propel me to a deepening insight of what the nature of union is. And on the process of that, to go through the moving from just being solitary to feeling alone and giving voice to it in an open way, to have then the shift of experience that I was actually not alone at all. And it was just that I had a blip of how I was thinking it was going to show up. Lonely, alone, solitary. What are these words for you? In what ways do they enliven you in your own relationship with yourself? In what ways do they have connotations that you're still learning from, that can catch you up at times? This we can share. And what does it mean? In one of the sutras, Radiant Sutras, there's the end of that one line that says, "This is your school, just you and infinity." That is true freedom. When our awakening comes to that place where we really do experience that it's just us and infinity. And that anything in our storyline doesn't pull us away from that, but rather anything in our storyline is lived out from that place. So I'm going to take it off recording and out of focus mode so we can share. So the sharing is the concepts or the words alone, lonely, and solitary or solitude. What are they for you? And where do they support you? And where do they confuse you? And what might you share of your own wisdom here? And the second, what is it? What is it that it's just you in the universe, you in the eternal? What does hearing that do within you?